Bongo, Tony, Ion by Ras Flaco Tafari. In time and space, is our impact significant in the constellation of bright stars? Will we be as faithful as the North Star? Or will we be the running star with a flashing appearance? Ras Flaco Tafari. WISEMIND Publications. Unshackle your mind. Copyright WISEMIND Publications 2022. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced or stored without prior permission of the publisher. Bongo, Tony, Ion. Written by Ras Flaco Tafari. Edited by Joseph Powell. Cover design by Ja Reveal Designs. Layout by Flaco Tafari. Published by WISEMIND Publications. Distributed by WISEMIND Publications. Contact rasflaco@gmail.com. RASFLAKO@gmail.com. WISEMIND Publications @gmail.com. WISEMINDpublications.com. Table of Contents. Page 5, Youth Days. Page 6, Black Heart Man. Page 7, Rudolph Franklin and the Coral Gardens Atrocity. Page 9, 7 Miles of Black Star Liner. Page 11, Emperor Haile Selassie Visit to Jamaica. Page 13, Herb Smoking. Page 14, Living in Black River. Youth Days. I am Bongo Tony of North Gully and King Street. I attended North Gully Basic School at the age of 5. Not many individuals living in Montego Bay have any knowledge of the Gully School. I also have a scar on my forehead I received from falling from the school board wall and hitting my head on the concrete floor of that school. I will always cherish the memory of Miss Dent, who was the principal who used to take me on a regular visit to the Adventist church in the community. Sometimes church meetings would be held at my grandmother's house. There I learned the skill to make patchwork from scraps, small pieces of cloth which were available for that purpose. Only a one and a few persons from the 12 students of my class are presently alive. Sometimes when I see one of them on the road, they would say to their friends, "See one Gully School man day." I left Gully School at the age of 7 and attended the Albayam Primary School. The community was named Gully. It was a water course, and whenever there was a heavy downpour of rain, the residents would hear the rushing sound of a huge volume of water which moved everything in its path to the sea. Even parked cars, weak fences, old houses, and animals would be swept away. The shout, "Gully a come down!" would be echoed through the community. The place was flooded, and when the heavy volume of water came through, everyone's house or yard in the water path would be flooded. The Blackheart Man. I remember one time as a little youth going to Albayan school. We were playing the game of cricket on the field. The batsman hit a ball in the nearby bushes, and I started to run in the bush to recover the ball. I noticed that all the other players were reluctant to enter the bush. They were afraid of the Blackheart Man, who they thought was living in the bush. The Blackheart, who was the Rasta man, was really in the bush, but I too did not know at that time. When I went to recover the ball, I heard the sound of a broken branch. I looked into the ginup tree. There was the Rasta man. He said to me, "Youth see some ginup, yeah?" And he dropped more than one bunch of fruit in my hand. When my schoolmates looked, they saw me returning with the ball and my 2 hands filled with ginup. They all thought I would be taken away. I offered them some ginups, but they did not accept. They shouted, "You see him? Where him one day?" I was not afraid. I grew up with Rasta. On several occasions, my school teacher warned the students to avoid making contact with the black-heart man in the bushes. In those days, the Rasta man never walked on the road, but crossed the road when they see a person approaching or a vehicle coming their way. Men and people would shout, "See the Rasta man day?" They would look for stones to throw at him. As such, the Rastaman was always careful not to be seen in public places. Rastaman could not have a woman or family. Those days the woman would say he had nothing she wanted, as he did not eat cooked food. He ate berries and fruits and nuts. He did not have a house. He did not wear good clothes or shoes. Many times the Rastaman had to run away, leaving his cooking pot on the fire as he was chased by people in the village. Rudolph Franklin and the Coral Gardens Incident. Rudolph Franklin usually visited the gully course to sell fire coal, peas, and bananas, and other ground provisions. He did not have locks. He was a comb-some Rasta. Every Friday, he would take fire coal to sell in the community. Rudolph would make trips with the bags of coals in the night, and when the residents woke up in the morning, they would see the bags of coals and other goods for sale. He would deliver to those who ordered his products, and the residents of the community were all amazed of the strength of Rudolph and his ability to carry the huge bags of fire coal along with farm produce all himself. I know Rudolph Franklin as a good man. At the time of the Coral Gardens atrocity, I was 9 years old. I remember clearly when the police arrested a Rastaman from the community of Canterbury and then took him by foot to the police station. The gleeful crowd was screaming, "Wah! See them hold one more of them, yeah?" The noise from the crowd passing my yard was getting louder, so I climbed my gate and looked over to see who the police were carrying down to the station. I saw this Rastaman that I knew from the Paradise Row. He was being dragged with a rope tied around his neck, both hands tied at his back. The rope around his neck was tied to the police van, which was driven by the police themselves. The boisterous crowd was throwing stones and anything they could find at the Rastaman, who was trying desperately to slip the missiles and the angry swing of the police baton. Both the police and the citizens showed no mercy. No one said, "Leave the man alone." Even if I could say anything, no one could hear my little voice. I know the man. He was a good man, a humble man. He was a Rasta man. 7 miles of Black Star Liner. There was an ancient Rastaman by the name of Job. He was older than Priest Brown. He told me that he had big, strong locks and used to raise goats in the gully some years ago. He said that one day he had heard a declaration that 7 miles of Black Star Liner would be coming in the Kingston harbor, so all Rastaman should be prepared. He said to I, "Rastaman, I take it seriously." It was the time of great Rasta tribulation, suffering, and oppression in Jamaica. Many Rastamen were happy to learn of plans to take them to Africa, as repatriation was on their mind. Job decided to sell out his house and his goats, but the Irish showed him not to sell out all his goats or his house. He then traveled to Kingston for the repatriation conference. It was a back to Africa call. He was very anxious to travel on the Black Star liner. Job said when he went to Bakawa on the day announced the news, he beheld a large group of Rasta in the place. Everything was going on good. There was a big fire of tire burning with a lot of black smoke in the air. In those days, Rastaman did not travel with a rod, but carried a staff of 7 feet or more in his hand. While he was there in the meeting, a group of Rasta decided to go to the park and use their rod to break off the hand of a statue that was there. The police learned of this action, and a battalion of riot police was dispatched to the scene. Rastaman had to flee. Many were caught and badly brutalized. Even Prince Emmanuel was badly beaten, and the police said he was the leader. In this commotion, Job beat a hasty retreat. He decided to run all the way to Montego Bay. However, when he ran and reached out at Spanish Town Road, he rested for a couple of days. It came to his realization that the Black Star liner will no longer be arriving, and decided to return to Montego Bay. While contemplating his next move, he saw a goods truck approaching in his direction. He quickly hid in the bushes, and when the truck passed, he jumped out, ran down the truck, and hopped onto the back of it. If the driver was aware of him, he would be beaten off the truck. Job said it was a lucky thing he did not sell his house and all of his goats those days, or he would not have anything to return to. The incident with the breaking of the statue's arm and the beating of Rasta by the police mobilized Prince Emmanuel to move his headquarters to Bobo Hill, Bull Bay. Emperor Haile Selassie visit to Jamaica. When Emperor Haile Selassie visited Jamaica, my uncle took me to Parade, now known as Sam Sharp Square. My Uncle Roy held me above him, with my legs around his neck, as the crowd was overpowering and there was no space for children. The railway train took His Majesty to the Montego Bay Railway Station, and he traveled by government car to Parade. Priest Brown made a float, which was placed on a truck adorned with red, gold, and green colors. Unfortunately, the float, with many Rastafari and non-Rastafari, was not able to reach its destination. The police department installed a barricade around the center of the town. Anyone who tried to go across it would be beaten by a riot baton or jabbed with the bayonet of a rifle. People were on the road from 5 a.m. in the morning. They all wanted to hold a good position, which would allow them to see the African king and to hear what he had to say. When I looked around, I could see school children in their uniforms. I also saw the church, firemen, the lodgemen, the Pocomania, and other religious denominations was all present with a small Jamaican flag waving in their hand. They were all anticipating the arrival of the motorcade. The crowd was much bigger than the police presence, and the crowd took over on that day. All the buildings on the location had onlookers on their rooftops, patiently waiting and looking anxiously for the entrance of the Rasta God. There was a lot of excitement to see what the Rasta God looked like. For many years they were hearing of His Imperial Majesty, and this was their chance. When I returned home, my grandmother asked me about my experience, and I said to her, "Yeah, man, I'll go see him. Him day a parade, dressed in a khaki suit." My granny laughed and said, "Ah, boy." It was a day and night celebration. The sound system blasted culture and Rastafari songs day and night. It was blazing chalice without fear of the police. The ganja was abundant. In those days, big man burned chalice and the little boy burned spliff. It was one of the sweetest joys for Rasta in Jamaica. For that week, when His Majesty visited, the talk on people's lips was, "Rasta, ya God come." And Rasta would reply, "Back to Africa we go, ya. And I see God come." From the time of the visit of Emperor Haile Selassie to Jamaica, and especially to Montego Bay, where every youth of age in my community, such as Puso, Little P, Sweet Meat, started to grow locks. Even the Stepa youths began to cite up Rastafari liberty and become more African conscious. In the time of tribal war, Gully was the stronghold. It was the time of ratchet knife, a time when you could get cut from ear to ear. It was called the telephone cut. It was not a time when a handgun was prominent in the community. Herb smoking. As a youth growing up among Rastafari, the ancients always blessed the chalice, then smoke it in a circle. Nowadays, some man don't let you burn his chalice. He alone want to burn it. There was no tobacco in any man cup. Rastaman was not even smoking cigarettes. It was straight herb burning. It was the old men who were smoking tobacco. I always see the chalice being blessed before and not being smoked without a blessing in these times. One day when I went to the country and visited my old friend Ancient Leslie, who lost his sight some years ago, anytime I hear him in the morning time, he would chant, "Jah, Rastafari." He has one ancients that if you give him a rizla to smoke his herb, he would ask for a brown bag to build his spliff, even though he cannot see. When I arrived and hailed him, I shouted, "Wow!" He answered, "Who dat?" I replied, "One of your brethren come to check you, man. I used to watch you from a youth come up." He said to his daughter, "Who a talk to I?" I said, "Tony, I a talk to you, man." He replied, "Rastafari, Tony? Who will live up there, sir?" You know how long I ask for the eye? Me no say the eye a Rasta from long time. I always admired the ancient. He always had a serious look on his face and always traveled with his machete and his knife. And as he knew that as a Rasta man, the most of the people in the community were against him. However, when he looked at me as a little youth growing up, he always gave I a different smile. He greeted I with these words, "Youth, Rasta youth." I gave him a spliff the day I visited his house. He laughs loudly. "Ha ha ha!" And I said, "Aya, you don't know what you do for I." I promised myself that my next visit return to his house, I will take him some fruit juice for him. For many years he is firm in the faith. Even when he lost his sight, he still remained as a strength to I man. He was the only one who I could reason with about Rasta. Living in Black River. I resided in Black River for many of my youthful years. I was living in a place called Newtown. It was a Rastafari village with a place called Dreadites. The Rastas there had many talents. One was a football coach of 2 Rasta teams, named Black Lion and Black Star. The man, Kabas, locked pot. That is, he did not eat out of anyone's pot. Rastaman Klagi and Biga Tuti were serious in what they do. There was also Ras Ray, who left Clarendon College and went to the hills to live. He did not eat from any shop, and he separated from society's norms and chose Rastafari liberty. It was a serious stage of Rastafari development when you decide to burn every system without partiality and live naturally. I was in school one day when the school principal called me in his office. He said he wanted to see my hair, and that time my locks were just pushing out. I took off my hat. He saw some wires pushing out, and he said I cannot remain in school like that. I was just humble. I allowed the principal to talk. He said I should go downtown and get a trim and return to school. I rode off on my bicycle and went in town and bought some orange juice and cornbread. And now I'm off that. It took 3 weeks for the principal to see me. When he did, he said, "Young man over there, young man over there." I did not look in his direction. I took time and disappeared out of his sight. The principal now started to visit my class. I started to scold class. Those days the country school had a garden. I spent all my school time there. One day a school inspector visited the garden on an inspections day. He saw me there. He said to me, "How are you not in school?" I replied, "The principal doesn't want me there, boss. He said I'm a Rasta." The inspector replied, "How him mean say you a Rasta? Make me see a book." When he looked on my school books, he said, "Nothing no wrong," said he would give the principal a talk. When he had words with the principal, he instructed a student to advise me to return to my class. I was respected in school from this time onwards. There was another incident when I went to woodwork class and saw one teacher by the name of Spaulding, who painted a piece of stick red and declared that he beat all bad boys. When I entered his class, I noticed he was circling me more than time. So I said to him, "Why are you circling me?" The teacher said, "My rod is to beat all bad boys." I now realized he was speaking to me. When I look around, I saw him calling Mr. Williams, the other class teacher, standing at the door to prevent me from running out. Now Mr. Spaulding, with the stick in hand, started to move in my direction. Realizing that, I got up immediately and moved towards the door. Mr. Williams appeared like he was trying to hold the door, so I took one chair and swung it. Mr. Williams moved out the way. I put down the chair, left the classroom, and rode out of the schoolyard on my bicycle to Newtown to reason with my Rasta brethren. I told them that the teacher, Mr. Spaulding, is rushing me with his red stick, so I had to leave the school compound. My brethren were very upset. They said, "Come on. Awa Spaulding deal with. We'll go round there, aya." About 24 bicycles, all painted in red, gold, and green, with Rastaman flying locks riding through the schoolyard. Everyone was wondering what was going on. Now, all the Rasta riders jumped off their bicycles and left them at the class door. When the teacher looked out the classroom door, he saw a sea of locks flying in his face. And every Rasta at the door was wearing a screw face. The group of Rasta said, "Star! I deal with my little school brethren, so, Star. Who? Me know why I drink at night time." After the verbal exchange, all my 24 Rasta brethren rode off the school compound. Soon after the principal came to investigate the matter, I explained the situation to him. And having listened to me, he then asked Mr. Spaulding to hand over the red stick to him, as it seemed to be causing problems. From that day, I was not interfered with at school. It was a time when every Rasta was dealing with love and not war. And when I brought my defense to school, he knew then that Rasta was not simple. I spent many times in Black River among my Rasta friends. Ras Akula owned the Vibes record shop. It was a cool-out place when I left school in the evening. It was a place where Rasta music was played all day. The serving of green juices was on the menu, along with a variety of ital dishes. WiseMindPublications.com